20 engineers failed. A delivery guy fixed it in minutes with a beat-up tablet and no badge. We're bleeding money by the second. Get it fixed. That's what Sheila McKenna, the operations director at a high-tech distribution center in Tulsa, barked into her headset. Her face was tight, shoulders locked. She hadn't slept in 36 hours, and the warehouse floor behind her looked like a war zone. Dozens of engineers pacing back and forth, screens glowing with error codes, robotic arms frozen mid-motion, and packages stacked up like a collapsed dam. For 3 straight days, the entire automated sorting system had been down. Nothing was moving. Not a single conveyor belt, scanner, or robotic loader. They'd flown in top engineers from Austin, Phoenix, and even Portland. All of them highly paid. All of them stumped. And the worst part? Every single hour they stayed offline was costing the company close to $140,000. Orders weren't shipping. Contracts were being violated. Clients were threatening to walk. The board was breathing down Sheila's neck, and if someone didn't figure this out soon, she knew she'd be made the face of the failure. But let's rewind. 2 weeks earlier, they'd rolled out a brand new firmware update for their automated system. A sleek network of AI-powered conveyors, robotic pickers, and scanners that operated faster than any human team could ever match. It was supposed to improve efficiency by 20%. Instead, it brought everything to a screeching halt. They'd tried downgrading the software. Didn't work. They replaced half the physical sensors. Still nothing. A team of 5 had been working on it all night, checking every single connection one by one, their eyes bloodshot, their tempers boiling. "It doesn't make sense," one engineer muttered under his breath, sipping his 3rd energy drink in an hour. "It should be working. All the code checks out." Nearby, another cursed under his breath, slamming his laptop closed. "Everything's technically fine, but it's acting like it's blind. It's not reading the package weights, not responding to the trigger points." A 3rd chimed in. "It's almost like it's being told to ignore everything, but we've wiped the logic tree 5 times. That's when Sheila stepped away from her station and whispered to herself, "This place is going to eat me alive." The place smelled like burnt plastic, stress sweat, and spilled coffee. The buzz of machinery trying and failing to restart echoed through the metal beams of the ceiling. This wasn't just a glitch. This was sabotage-level chaos. In the far corner of the warehouse, someone had pulled a folding cot next to a desk. Another engineer was asleep in his chair, head back, mouth open, an untouched slice of pizza in his lap. Sheila looked up at the main screen showing a massive countdown timer. 4 days, 3 hours, 12 minutes offline. It might as well have been a death sentence. But across the city, someone was finishing up a delivery route completely unaware that he was about to walk straight into the middle of this breakdown and change everything. Derrick Boone had no idea what kind of storm he was about to step into. He was parked outside Bay 14 of the distribution center, tapping the side of his steering wheel to an old Outkast song humming through the truck's Bluetooth speaker. Cargo van was clean, half full, smelling faintly of lemon air freshener and motor oil. Derrick was the kind of guy who liked things neat, labels facing forward, tools wrapped and zip-tied, and always 5 minutes early. At 38, Derrick had been working delivery routes in and around Oklahoma for over a decade. Packages, supplies, food equipment, whatever needed moving, he handled it. But what people didn't always know was that Derrick had another skill, a quiet one. He fixed things, not cars or plumbing or drywall, electronics, systems, code. And he wasn't half good. He was damn near brilliant. Grew up tearing apart radios in his mom's garage in Tulsa's west side. By 14, he was building his own circuit boards from scratch, coding with scraps of a laptop he'd salvaged from a yard sale. But life didn't throw scholarships his way. No tech startup offers, just bills, family to help, and a world that didn't always know how to see past a pair of steel-toed boots and calloused hands. So yeah, Derrick drove delivery vans, but every now and then he'd help a neighbor fix their Wi-Fi, repair a gaming console, or troubleshoot a vending machine's logic board just for fun. Today was just another job, or so he thought. He pulled around the back where the loading bay usually buzzed with movement, only it was dead quiet. A single forklift sat abandoned like someone had jumped out mid-shift. The bay doors were half open, and the only person outside was a guy pacing back and forth, phone glued to his ear, muttering, "I told them this wasn't ready to deploy. They rushed it, now it's broken and it's my name on the rollout. Derrick cut the engine, hopped out with his delivery form, and grabbed the crate from the back. He rolled it inside on a dolly and immediately felt the change. The air was thick, the kind of tension you don't need to see to feel, like walking into a classroom during a fight. No one greeted him. Everyone was too locked in, hunched over monitors, typing furiously, or staring at the same frozen robot arm as if it had betrayed them personally. A woman in a black polo with the word Sentry Corps stitched on the chest walked past, barely glanced at him. "Excuse me, I'm here with the..." "Yeah, just put it by Dock 3, she said without stopping. Derrick nodded slowly. "Mind signing?" She stopped, sighed, took the tablet, scribbled something, and kept moving. He parked the crate where she pointed, then lingered a second. He glanced at a monitor nearby. Dozens of lines of error code were scrolling in red, and right in the middle was something he hadn't seen in years. A firmware loop error tied to a sensor array, misread. He frowned. Derrick stepped closer, not because he was nosy, but because when you've worked on this kind of thing before, on smaller scales, sure, you recognize patterns. Glitches have a certain smell to them, and this one reeked of something familiar. That's when he heard it. A voice from 2 rows over. "We've wiped the entire diagnostic queue again, and it still won't reroute." Someone else shouted, "We can't keep testing on live modules. We're frying the secondary paths." Derrick tilted his head slightly. He wasn't supposed to get involved, but something about the desperation in their voices, the same frustration he used to feel when things wouldn't respond no matter how many hours he put in, it pulled at him. He shouldn't have said anything, but sometimes the words just fall out before you can catch them. "You guys checked the secondary logic gate configuration?" It wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, just a casual question tossed out like someone asking if the vending machine was out of Dr. Pepper. But it stopped 3 people cold. A woman with red braids twisted into a bun looked up from her monitor. She blinked. "What?" Derrick cleared his throat, suddenly aware that he wasn't wearing a badge, a headset, or anything remotely corporate. "I saw a loop error flash on that screen over there. Looked like a misread tied to the sensor array. Might be cascading through the secondary logic gate. Just wondering if someone double-checked how the fallback routines are nested." Now, 4 more heads turned, including one guy who looked like he hadn't shaved in a week and was wearing 2 different colored socks. "You work with Sentry Corps?" he asked, squinting. Derrick shook his head. "Nah, I just deliver parts." The guy rolled his eyes and muttered, "Perfect," before turning back to his laptop. But not everyone dismissed him. "Hold up," said the woman with the red braids. "You said you saw a loop error in the fallback path?" "Yeah," Derrick nodded. "It jumped when someone hit the manual reset. That's a system loop, not a hardware failure. Most likely the update caused the sensors to feed empty values upstream, which the logic path reads as null. When that happens, fallback kicks in. But if your fallback tree isn't complete..." She finished his sentence without thinking. "The system gets stuck in an open loop." Derrick smiled slightly. "Exactly." Now she was staring at him like he'd just read her private diary. "You're not just a driver." Derrick shrugged. "Didn't say I was just anything?" The room didn't exactly pause, but there was a noticeable shift in the air. Half the team ignored him, but the other half? They leaned in, curious, skeptical, but curious. She waved him over. "I'm Nyla, systems lead. We've been throwing everything at this damn thing for 3 days. You see something? Talk me through it." He glanced around. "You sure? I don't want to..." "Dude," Nyla said, cutting him off. "I watched a guy try to recompile the firmware and fry $2,000 worth of sensors yesterday. If you've got something we missed, talk." So Derrick rolled up his sleeves and stepped behind the monitor. The code on the screen was bloated, sloppy. Not the engineer's fault. It looked like someone rushed the update and copied over functions without cleaning the callbacks. He started pointing out variables that were improperly nested, error flags that were being thrown but never caught. "Your system is reading null on package feed wait," he explained. "So it thinks it's lifting a ghost. That's what's triggering the stop-start loop. Problem is, instead of flagging it to the override, the loop pushes it back through primary, which only recognizes full weight values. That's why it's stalling and locking the arm in mid-motion." Someone behind them whistled. "Damn, that actually makes sense." Nyla sat back. How do you even know all this? Derrick shrugged. Used to build logic boards for vending machines. Same kind of flow, just smaller scale. Okay, so what would you do? First, I'd isolate the faulty array. Second, I'd rewrite the fallback tree to accept a null as a flag, not an error. Third, I'd reroute the package ID to use weight or barcode scan, whichever is readable. That way, if one sensor fails, it doesn't shut the whole thing down. Nyla blinked. Can you show me? He nodded. You got a test station? They brought him over to a diagnostic console. Derrick cracked his knuckles, pulled out his own tablet, something old and beat up, but loaded with custom tools he'd written himself, and plugged in through the auxiliary port. Within 5 minutes, he had a readout on the broken sensor array. Look here, he said, pointing. This node's giving you garbage. It's not broken. It's mismapped. Someone installed it upside down. Nyla burst out laughing, not because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. 20 engineers had flown in, hundreds of hours spent, thousands of dollars burned, and this man just pinpointed the root cause in under 10 minutes. But Derrick wasn't done. He hadn't even scratched the surface yet, and things were about to get even more interesting. By now, the room was split. Half the engineers were crowding around, watching as Derrick walked Nyla through his logic like it was second nature. The other half? They were hanging back, crossed arms, raised eyebrows, whispering. One of them, a guy in a tight button-down with a Sentry Core lanyard and a clipboard tucked under his arm, finally stepped forward. You know, he said loudly, we've had people from MIT and Stanford working on this. Are you really telling us a delivery driver fixed what they couldn't? Derrick looked up, calm, no sarcasm, just steady. I'm not telling you anything, he said. I'm just showing what I see. The guy smirked. Right. And next you'll tell us you got a PhD from YouTube. No, Derrick replied. Community college dropout. Couldn't afford the last semester. The room got real quiet. Derrick didn't flinch. He leaned over the test monitor and tapped a diagnostic graph. But this sensor right here, it's ghosting data every 4th cycle. That's why your fallback routine keeps restarting. You can patch it or replace the sensor, but if you don't rewrite the logic tree to handle it, it's just going to happen again in a month. Nyla stepped in, cutting through the tension. Look, I don't care if he learned this from a cereal box. What he's saying makes more sense than anything I've heard in 3 days. Another engineer, an older man with a thick gray beard and tired eyes, nodded. He's right about the null value handling. We've been chasing the wrong end of the loop. Clipboard guy wasn't convinced. Let me guess, you've got a whole fix ready to go on that rusty tablet of yours? Derrick didn't answer. He just raised an eyebrow and ran the new protocol. The entire room watched as the screen changed from red error messages to a soft green. For the first time in 3 days, one of the robotic arms moved, clean, fluid, no hesitation, and dropped a box onto the conveyor. The room gasped. It wasn't everything, not yet, but it was something. Something that had been completely locked up was now running. Derrick stepped back. System's responding, he said. Might want to let it run a test loop before going full stream. Nyla's hands were on her hips. You wrote that logic tree? Modified it. I keep a base protocol on me for testing equipment. Comes in handy. Clipboard guy wasn't done. You know, we can't just deploy code from some guy off the street. There are legal liabilities, protocol checks, chain of custody. But before he could finish, the floor manager came sprinting in from the side hallway. What did you do? She shouted. Everyone turned. Sheila McKenna. She looked around, wide-eyed, then locked onto the conveyor. It was moving. Boxes were sliding. The robot arms were lifting. She stared at the screen, then at Derrick. Who did that? She demanded. Nyla pointed. Him. Derrick gave a small wave. Sheila stared. You're with engineering? No, ma'am, Derrick said. I was just dropping off a shipment. Sheila blinked once, twice. So how the hell did you fix it? He hesitated. Wasn't trying to. Just saw something that looked familiar and asked a question. Sheila didn't know whether to laugh or scream. You're telling me a delivery driver solved a multi-million-dollar problem we had the best minds in the country working on? He shrugged. Sometimes the answer's not about who's smartest. It's about who's paying attention. That one hit the room like a gut punch. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Clipboard guy muttered something under his breath and slipped away. Nyla chuckled. He's not wrong. Sheila rubbed her temples. I need to call the VP. Someone please verify the patch and start running diagnostics on all other systems. I don't want this to be a fluke. Another engineer nodded and scurried off. Derrick started to back away. His job was done. Package delivered. System patched. Life goes on. Wait, Nyla called. You're just leaving? Yeah, he said. Still got 4 stops left today. But what you just did, he smiled, wasn't magic, just experience. Trust me, everything I know, I learned fixing busted machines in corner stores and watching online tutorials at 3 a.m. You'd be surprised what you can learn when no one thinks you matter. But as he walked back toward his van, none of them realized he hadn't just fixed the system. He'd flipped a mirror on an entire room full of people. And the reflection wasn't something they were all ready to see. Derrick was halfway to the van when someone jogged after him. He heard the sneakers slapping against the polished warehouse floor before he turned around. It was Nyla. Wait up, she called out of breath. They want to talk to you, like, officially. Derrick raised an eyebrow. For what? I'm not on payroll. She laughed. Yeah, we know, but what you just did, that was cleaner than anything we've been able to put together. The execs want to see your patch, review it, maybe even... She paused, unsure how to finish the sentence. He gave her a knowing smile. Maybe even hire the guy they ignored 10 minutes ago? She didn't answer, but she didn't have to. Back inside, the air had shifted. A few of the engineers who had been whispering earlier now looked at Derrick differently. One nodded. Another, a younger guy with square glasses, actually stepped forward and said, That diagnostic script you ran, what environment was that written in? Python, Derrick replied, customized shell. Wrote it years ago when I was doing side work for a vending company. You can build off it if you want. Just don't make it proprietary and sell it back to me. They laughed. For the first time, it wasn't awkward. Sheila returned, holding a company tablet and flanked by a regional systems director in a blazer way too expensive for warehouse work. They'd reviewed the logs, cross-checked the patch. The fix was solid, efficient, elegant, even. Sheila walked straight up to Derrick. Her voice was lower this time, less edge. We want to run your fix across all 7 locations. We'll need the code signed and documented. I know you're not one of our staff, but I'd like to offer compensation for the time and work. Derrick blinked. You want to pay me to fix a problem I wasn't hired to fix? She looked him in the eye. Yes, you did what we couldn't. I'm not too proud to admit that. There was a pause, and then Derrick nodded. All right, but if I'm going to hand this over, I want one thing. What's that? Credit. She looked confused. Like name recognition? Exactly, he said. I don't want someone else slapping their name on this and acting like I was never here. I've been invisible long enough. I want my name in that update log. Another pause. Then she nodded. Done. He pulled out his tablet and walked them through the rest. How he built the override, what lines to adjust, depending on hardware variances. Even a backup function that could notify operators when 3 or more nulls hit in succession. An early warning trigger. He didn't dumb anything down, but he didn't talk over anyone's head either. He taught like someone who wanted people to understand, and people listened. Even the guy with the clipboard came back, this time with a notebook in hand, jotting things down quietly. Derrick finished the walkthrough, handed over a signed export of the code, and was just about to leave when the systems director stopped him. You ever think about coming in full-time? He asked. Not deliveries, I mean engineering, diagnostics, something permanent. Derrick hesitated. He looked around, at the cables, the machines, the charts, the engineers, then at his own hands, still rough, still marked by years of manual labor and hard-earned skill. I used to want that, he said. Thought if I worked hard enough, someone would notice. Get me in the door, but I stopped waiting on doors to open a long time ago. You opened your own, Nyla said softly. He smiled. I don't need a title to do what I do, but I'll think about it. He left a few minutes later, walking out with the same calm, unbothered energy he came in with. Except now, the warehouse behind him was alive again. The conveyor belts were running, the arms were lifting, the packages were moving, and every single person inside knew why. But even with the machines back online, something deeper had shifted. because for the first time in days, it wasn't just about solving a technical issue. It was about realizing who we overlook, who we dismiss, and how many geniuses we pass by just because they don't wear the right name tag. Later that night, back at his apartment in Broken Arrow, Derrick dropped his keys into the dish by the door and kicked off his boots. The apartment was quiet, just how he liked it. Clean, modest, with a folding table covered in circuit boards and an old flat screen on mute in the corner, playing a rerun of Family Matters. He sat down, pulled out the tablet, and opened the diagnostics log he'd saved from the warehouse. He didn't need to. It was fixed, but he wanted to make sure, double-check the pathing, run another simulation, fine-tune the delay buffer just a hair more. Old habits die hard. He was deep into the code when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He ignored it. It buzzed again, this time a voicemail. He sighed and pressed play. "Hey Derrick, it's Nyla. I know it's late, sorry. Just wanted to say thank you again. After you left, we got every line running. I mean every single one. Sheila's already on the phone with legal trying to get your name cleared for contract work. And listen, people were talking about what happened today. Some of them in ways they probably never would have if you hadn't spoken up. Just thought you should know, that it mattered. Anyway, hope you get some rest. You earned it." He let the message sit there for a moment, then played it again and again. He didn't smile, not exactly, but something in his shoulders softened. At that same moment, across town in a hotel conference room, the Sentry Corps engineers were huddled over laptops, picking apart Derrick's logic, not out of doubt, but out of curiosity. They couldn't believe how intuitive it was, how clean, how none of them had seen it. One of the younger engineers shook his head. "Man's not even on the payroll, and he's out here writing better code than we've seen all week." Another one added, "You know what really gets me? He didn't walk in like he knew better than us. He just asked questions." The regional director leaned back in his chair. "Sometimes it's not about hierarchy. Sometimes the sharpest mind in the room is the one no one bothered to listen to." Across 3 different cities, Derrick's patch was being uploaded into sister facilities before the night was over. In St. Louis, a floor operator noticed her scanner stopped skipping. In Mesa, a warehouse manager called his team in early. Systems were finally back up. In Jackson, 2 engineers reviewed the new tree logic and said, "Who the hell wrote this? It's smart." All of it led back to one man, one delivery driver, one mind that refused to be boxed in by job descriptions or ignored by degrees. But for Derrick, it wasn't about the recognition. It was about knowing he still had it. That spark, that instinct, that clarity. And for the first time in a long while, he felt seen. The next morning, Derrick was back on his route. Same van, same steel coffee mug in the cup holder, same playlist bumping tracks from Scarface and UGK. Nothing flashy, except this time, something had changed. Not out there in the streets, but in him. He pulled into a gas station off Highway 169, walked inside, paid in cash. The guy behind the counter, a teen with braces and earbuds, was watching a clip on his phone, loud, grainy. Derrick glanced over and paused. It was him. A blurry video someone had filmed in the warehouse while he was working with Nyla. You could barely hear what was being said, but it showed the moment the arm started moving again. The title? "Delivery driver solves what 20 engineers couldn't. Fixes system in minutes." Derrick chuckled to himself, shook his head, took his receipt, and walked out. He didn't post that, didn't ask for it, didn't even know someone was filming. But it was out there now. He drove through the day like he always did, dropping off packages, waving at front desk clerks, nodding at warehouse guys and loading docks. But every so often, someone would give him a second look, like they thought they'd seen him somewhere but couldn't quite place it. And he was fine with that. He didn't need a spotlight. He just wanted respect. Later that week, Nayla texted him again. "You ever think about doing this full-time? Tech consulting? Real clients? Real money? People are asking." He thought about it, long and hard. He loved fixing things, always had. But there was something he loved more. Being free. Free to walk in a room with nothing but knowledge. Free to help when he wanted to help. No performance reviews, no dress codes, just truth, wiring, and logic. He texted her back, "Maybe, but only if I get to keep wearing boots." She replied with a laughing emoji and a thumbs up. Derrick pulled up to his last delivery of the day, dropped off a package for a small IT firm near Owasso. The guy who signed for it was in his 20s, glasses smudged, shirt untucked. Before Derrick could walk away, the guy said, "Hey, are you the dude from that warehouse video?" Derrick paused. "Maybe," he said. "Dude, that was sick. Like, genius level. How'd you know all that?" Derrick smiled. "Sometimes all it takes is paying attention. Systems talk. You just gotta listen." The guy looked thoughtful. "You ever teach?" "Nah," Derrick said, "but maybe one day." He walked back to the van, climbed in, and started the engine. The world would go back to normal soon. The headlines would fade. People would move on. But somewhere out there, maybe a kid who saw that video would realize they didn't need a degree to be brilliant. Maybe someone would speak up in a room that didn't want to listen. Maybe a genius fixing Wi-Fi in a corner barbershop would stop doubting what they know. Because real brilliance doesn't always come in a lab coat or a corporate title. Sometimes it shows up in work boots with a wrench in one hand and a busted tablet in the other. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt overlooked, doubted, or dismissed because of your job, your background, or your title, share this video. Let people know that knowledge isn't reserved for the elite. It belongs to anyone willing to learn, ask, and listen. Don't wait for permission to be great. Your moment might be just one question away.